I remember that one.
And Le Mans, Bullet Ice. I even have the
Yeah.
Blob.
And
Sometimes he would say to me, when he'd have something very disappointed happen to him, he'd say, shit, now I've got to go home and watch the Blob to regain my confidence.
He liked motorcycles too, huh?
Oh, he was absolutely fabulous. He did all of his own motorcycle stunts on any film. In The Great Escape, they did not want him to do that jump over the fences, and he said, if I don't do it, I don't do the film. So he got his way, and he was just absolutely great. And you notice in this one motorcycle thing, he's not wearing a helmet. He's just got his old
right.
hat on.
That's an old bike.
Yeah. So anyway, that was him.
Well, tough to miss an old friend.
Yeah,
I know.
it really is. Here's a picture of Steve, and I don't know. I can maybe get these things out of the way here. Get a better shot. Steve, Chuck, myself, and the Chuck Norris fighting team, and we're all together and posed for that picture. And
There's Chuck and you, right?
There's Chuck.
There's Chuck.
Myself. There's Steve, and then this one was what the heck one? I think the Hunter. This is Lauren James, great stuntman, who was the stunt double for Steve. He has a wig on here,
Okay.
and this is myself, and this is the director. So we're all having a little bit of a conference, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, that's Steve with myself and Chuck Norris and the Chuck Norris fighting team members.
Awesome.
So.
So he got a wig on, and he looks like he's about the same size and everything.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
Right.
Yep. Again.
So this right here, tell me the story again. This was Great Britain.
The Hooligans, and the lady here, Lexi Alexander, was the director of that particular film.
So how did you deal with him? You said you picked the toughest guy out?
I took the toughest guy, and I said, we really don't want to hurt each other when we're doing this, so what we're going to do is we just pretend we're hurting. I said, for example, so-and-so, would you, because he was the toughest guy, I said, so-and-so, would you just grab me by the shoulder once? And he walks up real straight, grabs me, and just jerks it real hard. And I went around, I got his arm, and I just crunched, pulled him down to the ground, and I started talking to all the other hooligans. And this kid is, he's got one of these numbers, but he's afraid that he doesn't want to cry out to think that he's being hurt. And I'm showing all the other guys, but we don't really hurt anyone, do we? You know, and I give him one of those shots. And so by the time it was over, nobody gave me any trouble. That was it.
Those are real live hooligans there, huh?
So when I left them, they all autographed this for me. So I had that as a...
There's Lexi, she called you Dad.
Yeah.
I love you, Dad. Thanks.
Yeah. And
Lexi Alexander.
Yeah. And of course, this is from Karate Kid with Ralphie and Pat and myself.
How was Ralphie? How was he?
Ralphie
Good kid?
was an absolute sweetheart. And Pat Morita was actually a comedian in Las Vegas. He was billed as the Hip Nip. And he did not know anything at all about martial arts. So I had to make sure that when I trained him separately, so nobody else saw him not being Mr. Miyagi. They always saw him as this really badass guy. So I did that separately, and it worked out real well. So.
Wow, cool. There's some Steve McQueen. He said you had a lantern or something that he signed for you?
Well, here. That's in this room.
Okay, let me take a look at it.
Okay. Now this is from the film that he did called An Enemy of the People. And he is looking at this kerosene lamp, and up in the corner, which you cannot see very well, it's many years ago, he has written, "To Pat, my guiding light, Steve," and using the lantern as a metaphor for the guiding light.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And of course this is the undefeated Chuck Norris fighting team, of which I was the captain. Right there I had a little bandage over my eye. And
is Chuck in there?
No, Chuck is not in that one. Chuck is down here. This was the given to me, to the members of the team, by Don Rodriguez. this is Chuck here, and this is myself, and that is to the team. That's right over here is that trophy, and it was given to us as Team of the Century, the Chuck Norris Fighting Team, Pat Johnson, and so that was.
Oh, cool.
Mention to you with the martial arts is there is no one central governing body that regulates it in any way, shape, or form. So anybody can be a black belt if you want to be in a year. People give, and I say give black belts away, but in my organization I require that people have to wait 3 years before they can test for black belt, and then they might fail. But anyway, these are all of the halls of fame. The thing that caused his death was lung cancer. And I see that cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah.
And I see the cigarette in his mouth there. And it hurts me to know that he was killing himself. And but he was a rebel. He was going to do things his way.
I guess nobody told him to quit smoking. He wouldn't listen to him anyway, right?
He did. He did himself. Actually, what happened was he saw that I never smoked. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. I have enough bad vices. I don't need those added to them. But every time I look at those pictures and I see that cigarette in his mouth, it reminds me of what it did to him and keeps me from...
Was he a pretty heavy smoker?
Well, he smoked enough.
Yeah.
Enough. And so those, every time I look at those pictures, they're a reminder to me. There's a, this is a picture, I did the film Hooligans in London. And this was a picture in London. It was all graffitied. This wall was graffitied. And so it's always a reminder to me. Change your life.
I mean, what got you into martial arts? I mean, why did you,
When I was in Korea from 1963 to 1964 in the U.S. Army. There was I was a chaplain's assistant. I worked with the Catholic chaplain. And there was a Protestant chaplain that we all worked out of the same chapel. And there was an interpreter, and his name was Kang Do-hee. And Kang knew very proper English, but for example, one day he said something to me. I said, "Oh man, that's cool." And he said, "It's cool, but it's very hot outside." So he said if I would help him with his English to know all the slang and all that sort of stuff, that he would teach me karate. So I had my own private teacher, Kang Do-hee, for I think it was 13 months that I was in Korea. And when I came back to my home in Niagara Falls, New York, I was the only black belt in the whole city. So I began to teach. I opened a studio called Kim's Studio. And I met Chuck Norris at a tournament in Chicago. And Chuck had trained in Korea, but further south at Osan Air Force Base because he was in the Air Force. And we hit it off very well. So he said to me, "If you ever decide to come to California, I think we could work well together." So one day I jumped on a Greyhound bus and got to California, called Chuck, said, "Here I am." And so he put me to work teaching at his karate studio in Sherman Oaks, California. That's where I met my wife, because she had two children from a previous marriage that she had the training. And her girlfriend, had her son there, and her girlfriend told her, "You should see this guy. He's really a knockout, and he's a great teacher. The kids absolutely love him." So my wife showed up, and
there you go.
Ended up getting married.
So, and you said this is a kind of a unique style that you guys, like a Korean and a Japanese, melded together.
What happened was, when Chuck trained in Korea, and when he returned to his home in California, there were only Japanese instructors here, and that came about because after World War II, the Japanese at that time were so cruel to the Koreans that the Koreans hated the Japanese. And the Japanese had all been put into the prisoner of war camps on the West Coast. So the Koreans all moved to the East Coast. When Chuck came back from Korea, he was on the West Coast, and there were only Japanese-style instructors. So he could not improve with any other Koreans. I was on the East Coast, and I was able to improve with the Koreans. But Chuck created the American style of karate because he learned the Korean with all of the kicking techniques. And then he learned the Japanese from the Japanese instructors on the West Coast. And he was the one who actually used the hand techniques and the combination of the hands and the feet to create the American style of karate. And which is so today. When I decided to come to California, Chuck taught me those same things. So he was really my instructor. And I learned and eventually got into tournament fighting, and I was the captain of Chuck's undefeated fighting team. I had a personal record of 198 matches. I won 196. I had one draw because that's all the team needed to win. I just had to hold off the guy, and I had one loss. And the instructor, or the black belt who beat me, I won't say his name at this point, later he came up to me and he said, "I have never been so sore in my entire life. You beat the crap out of me." He said, "I'm just absolutely bruised." He said, "If we were not on my home territory, you would have won that match." So I said, "Well, yeah, on the record, it shows a loss, and that's what it's always going to be." So anyway.
And you said the Japanese style was more aggressive with the fist.
Far more aggressive.
The Koreans were
used the hand techniques a great deal, where the Koreans were all kicking. 90% of their fighting was done with kicking. They couldn't use their hands at all. So, and they figured, my legs are longer than my arms, they're stronger than my arms, so I'm going to use my legs as weapons, which they did beautifully. But if someone really pressed them and was able to get inside the legs, they didn't have anything to fall back on. So Chuck Norris combined the two because all the Japanese black belts were on the West Coast, and he combined the two, the Korean style with the feet, the Japanese style with the hand, and he was the one who actually created American karate. And I'm fortunate that I became part of his team and got to know him so well.
Nice.
With he and Barbara Bush, and this is one with him walking with his arm around my shoulder with Pat Morita when we were doing the third Karate Kid. It's supposed to take place in Okinawa, and so we used Hawaii as the backdrop.
There's the president with his arm around you.
Yep. And here we are, just talking together at that little.
He told me the story that he came up to you. You knew you were a karate guy or something.
And he jumped into a fighting position. When he first saw me coming, I was standing just waiting for him, and he jumped into this fighting stance because Jerry Weintraub had told him about who I was. And as he's walking along, he goes, "Ha!" like this. And about 15 or 20 different Secret Service guys are reaching for weapons, and I put my arms up. And I said, "Sir, are you sure you want to do this?" And so he started laughing, and he put his arm around me. So we walked here. That's Pat Morita there. So we were walking. He has his arm around my shoulder. And then later I was talking with Mrs. Bush, and he...
Where's the other picture of the Bush right there?
Right here. He and Barbara Bush. And I'm wearing my son, Brett, this is my son, Brett, here. And I'm wearing the shirt from the high school that he went to, which was Crespi High School. So there are a few happy memories there. There's a picture up there, right directly in the middle, sitting down here, is Chuck himself. I'm in there someplace, I don't know exactly where, but that was at a big tournament in, here I am, way over here. This is Sam Allred, who was the guy who put on the tournament in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we were all there and having a good time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
And scared the shit out of me. I kicked the shit out of the guy for doing it. But I said, man, those knives, the effect it had on me, just seeing that steel, I said, man, I got to really get into that understand them, know them, and not be so afraid of a knife. So I developed a bunch of techniques as to how to handle a guy who has a knife, and if he gets at you. And I've trained if someone tries to hit you, stab you this way, tries to stab you this way, or tries to slash you all of these ways, so that there is a way that you can handle anytime a guy gets a knife.
So if you got a guy coming in like this for you, like that.
Here,
Yeah.
I'm going to do this until he drops the knife. Then I take the knife away from him and put it away from his throat. Okay.
Okay.
Learn a lesson.
Yeah. So if he tries that way, but if he tries to come at you like this,
well, if
he comes at you like to stab you like that.
This way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then it's this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no matter how he comes, I'm going to get him. If he comes slashing, what I would normally do.
If he comes slashing like this.
I would start with. I would put my hands down here, knowing that this is where he's going to strike. So when he slashes, I lean back. Then when he comes back, now I move in this way, break the arm over my shoulder, come back this way. The knife's going to be on the ground, and we're going to discuss what his issue is.
So your involvement with the Turtles movie, you worked with the stunt people, the stunt turtles?
Right. I took them, and when they teaching turtles how to fight in those big costumes was really, really something. But I worked it so that they did really well, and the stunt turtles and the real turtles, or real turtles who were actors who did all of the motions, the hand motions, all that sort of stuff. And then the stunt turtles were the guys who had to fight. So they had a lighter outfit on, and I had to teach them how to fight.
So you would choreograph a scene or something?
Specifically for these guys to fight. And it worked out well, obviously.
And how does that work? Maybe you got 4 guys in a fight, like guy number 1, you got him coming in this way, or guy number 2?
Well, what I had to do is I would look at the script and see what it was that they had to do. And I had to make it as comedic as possible. And for example, Mikey and Raphael, let's say they're fighting back to back. And what one would do when somebody was hitting at the guy who was back here, he would say duck, and they both duck, and 2 guys would end up hitting each other. Doing things like that.
Right.
Maybe comedic, but at least believable if turtles were doing it.
With a Gandhi thing like that.
Well, a friend of mine whose name was Nigel Binns, he wanted to do something for me. He was a martial arts guy. And so he said, I have to do something special for you. So he made this himself and gave it to me as a gift. He said, you're really a special person in my life, and I'd like to do this for you.
It's a beautiful sculpture.
Yeah.
So lifelike.
Yeah. This flag, I believe that the story behind this flag, when I was doing the 4th Karate Kid film, it was supposed to be done in Okinawa, but we used Hawaii for it. And I think this was on, this flag was on one of the battleships at Pearl Harbor when we were in Hawaii. And it was given to me as a gift. He was haunted by that for years.
What? Why was it? Why so?
Well, in that was the first film he ever did.
Right.
And so people remembered him for The Blob, and he was embarrassed by the fact that he did it, but it was his first opportunity, and that led to many other things that he did. But
what do you think was his greatest film? The Great Escape, maybe, or?
He had so many. I think that Tom Horn was the one that really showed him, because it was really Steve that was doing it. And so anyway, I have another lovely picture over here.
Let me see it.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, who signed and autographed to me, to Pat from Arnold, because I had done a film with him.
Did you go to Thailand to the Mortal Kombat movie, or?
Yes, yeah. Well, we did. There were a couple of Mortal Kombats, but we did go to Thailand. to do that film, and that was a lot of fun. But anyway,
some neat memorabilia in here.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of happy memories. There's Steve and I and Chuck Norris down there. I don't know if I told you the story about how that happened, how I got to start training Steve.
Tell me that again. Why don't you come over and tell me that story again?
Well, the way that the story worked was Steve was being trained by Bruce Lee. And Bruce wanted to be what Steve was. Steve wanted to be what Bruce was. Bruce was considered the baddest ass on the planet. And Bruce wanted to be this big movie star. So Bruce was teaching actors. That's how he made his money. Then he finally made it big with a film called Enter the Dragon.
Right, I remember that.
And yes, and that was the first film I ever appeared in. Anyway, after Bruce finished that, he told Steve, "I'm going to be doing film for now, so I won't be training." So he asked Bruce who he should train with, and Bruce said Chuck Norris is the guy. So he then hooked up with Chuck and started learning more martial arts. But Chuck had the same dream that Bruce had. He wanted to be a big movie star. So anyway, so Chuck got his first big break. And he went and he actually played the part of a bad guy in some silly movie, and he was supposed to rape a woman, and he was actually raping a pillow. And so when Chuck made it big, then Steve said, "Well, who am I going to train with now?" And Chuck said, "Well, Pat Johnson is my #1 guy." And Steve said, "Who the hell is Pat Johnson?" And Chuck says, "Trust me, you will like him." So I started training Steve, and we developed a very close friendship because we both had the same type of personality. We both had a lot in common in our upbringing. So finally, when Chuck got back from making the movie, I said to Steve, "Okay, Chuck is going to be back next week, so that's it for you and I." And he said, "But I don't want Chuck to train me. I want you to train me." And I said, "I can't do that. You're Chuck's student." He said, "What if I ask Chuck?" I said, "Well, if you ask Chuck and he says okay, then we'll hook up." So when Chuck got back, he asked Chuck, and Chuck said it's fine. So I started training him, and we became very best of friends. That's why they one picture that you saw in there of him with a lantern, which says autographed to Pat, my guiding light, Steve. So anyway, we became best friends. And
how often would you train? Would you?
Just about every day, at least minimum of 3 days a week. But sometimes it was 5 days a week.
Would you show him different moves and stuff like that?
And I'd work him out and all that sort of stuff. And it's funny because he died of mesothelioma, which is a form of lung cancer. And when Steve had to go, they did not have a cure for it here in America, but there was supposed to be some hospice in Mexico that they had a cure. So Steve went down there, and I went down to see him. And the last time I saw him, he was supposed to have some kind of treatment. And he and I talked together. And before I left, I said, I put my arm around him, I kissed him on the cheek, and I said, "I love you, Steve." And he said, "I love you too, Pat." And then I left, and about 2 days later, I heard on a radio, it was on the radio report, the actor Steve McQueen has died in a hospice in Mexico. And I had to pull over to the side of the freeway. I remember the spot where I was. And of course I shed tears. I mean, we were that close. And I composed myself, and then I drove home. And that was it. But,
must have been tough seeing him like that, right? I mean, he was
very, very much
probably a shell of himself, right, when you saw him up there.
Absolutely. But at least I got to see him, and we got to exchange our devotion to one another. But that was it. I still miss him to this day. I see a lot of his old movies still being played, some of the films that I appeared on with him, and I miss him.
So, and real quick, I mean, you and Chuck were in the service together in Korea. That's how you guys met,
No,
right?
we were not. We were both in the service, but he was in the Air Force at Osan Air Force Base. I was stationed in an area called Bupyeong, and I was in the Army, and I was a chaplain's assistant. So when I was traveling around, actually started my training of martial arts in Korea. And at a tournament up in Detroit, I ran into Chuck, and we both had the same style. We both had trained in Korea. And he said to me, if you should ever decide to come to California, I think we could work well together. So one day, for no reason, I jumped on that Greyhound bus, and I went out there, and I called Chuck and said, hey, I'm here.
Out of Niagara Falls, huh?
Right. So anyway, I got to California. Chuck asked me if I would take over training in one of the studios where Steve used to come to train with Bruce. And that's where Steve and I first met. And that's actually how I met my wife. She had brought her kids to the studio from her previous marriage, and I was training them. And I was so good with the kids that she just thought, this guy is going to make the most perfect husband. So here we are.
There you go.
50, 60 years later,
it
we're
worked.
still going strong.
Great. You got a great collection here.
Yeah.
You really do.